You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
All right. Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is June 16th, and I am excited to have Damon Pistulka with me today. I think I said that right. I butcher it every time. Hey, I'm getting better. We are going to hammer down on remote work today. We're going to talk a little bit about going back to work and what that means, and the dispersed team versus the in-office team. And I think a lot of companies are going to that kind of combination team as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Very relaxed today. But excited to have you on, Damon. Thank you so much for joining me. Tell us, or tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do so they know where you come from and what's going on.
All right. Well, great, Adam. Great to be on the show again. It's good to be here. I've got a company called Eggs Your Way with a couple other partners. What we do is we help people usually in the last 5 years of their business when we're trying to grow them to the size that they want, and then we help them sell their businesses or succeed them in whatever they want to do at the end to get them out of their business the way they want. But we focus on making sure they get more money than they really need out of the deal. That's the primary focus.
I think we all want a little bit more money than what we need. It makes those frivolous purchases that we all like to make once in a while so much easier.
Yeah, that extra 10% or something makes a difference. That's for sure. So
in my world, that's an extra couple of rounds of golf a week, or a new bowling ball, or ski trip, whatever. But so definitely respect that. You've been having a lot of conversations lately about remote work, though. And I think it's a really interesting time to bring this up, because you've got regulations are starting to relax a little bit. I know, like here in Southwest Florida, we're at like 50% capacity for most businesses that are public facing, which means also a lot of other businesses are actually starting to go back to the office and go back to work in the office. So how's it been out your way? You're out in Seattle.
It's the same here. I'm in Washington. It's the same way. Businesses are at 50%. Restaurants are at 50%. It's a little weird, but I'm sure as it is there. But things are somewhat, moving.
It's a good start, but let's jump into remote work, because I think a lot of people have been doing this for a few months here. And obviously you work remotely, and I work remotely. So we get the program, but what's some of the advantages that you found and that you've talked to different people about actually working remotely versus going to an office?
Well, the main thing I see in a place like Seattle, or where you've got significant traffic. I mean, in a lot of the metro areas, I don't care where you're at. If you're in a big metro area, and you see it in New York too, the same thing. You've got people that are commuting sometimes 2 hours each way, morning and night. And even if that's on public transit and they're not driving, that's still 4 hours, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. 2 hours is nothing anymore. An hour in the morning, an hour at night is nothing anymore for people. And when you start to go 3 and 4 hours, you go, okay, now remote working is something that can actually, if you can do it, allows your employees to be more refreshed throughout the entire week. Because, that's 20 hours. If you're doing it 4 hours a day, a week, that's 20 hours of commute time. That you just begin to hate that.
Yes.
I think that's one of the things that people are seeing, and they're seeing some good initial results from productivity because of that.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I think people get stressed out driving. I know I do, like in heavy traffic, and I've always been fairly fortunate in not having a commute that has, left me in gridlock traffic or high traffic areas where I couldn't get around, on side roads or back roads. But I know plenty of people, and I watched my mom commute for years growing up, an hour, 2 hours, each way. And, her stress level coming home after being at work all day and then driving 2 hours was like through the roof for at least the first half an hour, 40 minutes that she was home. So I think it's interesting you call that out in the respect of, people like that, just that stress relief of not having to commute.
Yeah. And in a practice like mine, when I have to visit multiple clients in a day, I mean, honestly, you're going to take hours of driving out every day the same way. And when you look at what we can do now remotely, and this, you can schedule client meetings back to back. I'm instantaneous from one to the next. And that lost time that was normally in the car can now be utilized for productive work for those clients during the week or other things, which is just amazing once you switch over.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, right? Yeah, there's a lot of things that can happen digitally, even in business, even in like big businesses, right? Working in call centers, I can't tell you how many conference calls as a department leader that I was on every week, talking to people in the 6 or 7 other sites across the globe. And so now I'm commuting an hour to get to the office. Then I'm sitting on conference calls all day, and then I'm commuting to come home. It's like, I could save myself the commute and the hassle and do all those conference calls from home. So I think, regardless of the size of your business, there's a lot of advantage of reducing down, time between calls with the virtual or video conferencing.
Yeah. And we've got one of our clients actually has, because of this, and they're actually an e-commerce business, so it may or may not be easier, but they're actually, I think, gonna, as soon as their lease is up, they're going virtual. So but from the owner's standpoint, the owner is like, I can move out of the metro area, I can move into the mountains where I want to be, I can run my business from there. We can rent a virtual co-working space, on a monthly basis or whatever. So I can come in for monthly team meetings and everybody, we still get that. He said, I'll even come in every week if I have to, one day a week or something like that for a few hours. He said, but we can all get out of this craziness of the commute and the traffic and just everybody being around us if we want to. He really is he's really jacked about it. So
and that is a perfect example, and it brings me to something that I think is interesting about all this, because like our team is fully dispersed. My business partner is like 2.5 hours from me. Our SEO guy is about 2 hours from me as well. So like we're fully dispersed team. And the advantage there is when I need to hire or bring somebody in, I don't have to look in just Fort Myers, Florida area.
Yeah. Your talent pool is so much bigger because you could hire somebody in the middle of Wyoming that's super talented, that really wants to live in the middle of Wyoming, has a totally different cost of living structure than someone where you're at, which is great.
Yes. Yeah. And like from like a sales perspective or business services perspective as well, like if I need somebody that is out on the West Coast, I can hire somebody out on the West Coast to manage my West Coast business on their time schedule. Then I don't have to take conference calls at 7 or 8 o'clock at night every night of the week.
Yeah, that's for sure. And and there's a lot of that going on. We've got another client that actually helps developer teams. They augment developer teams, and they've got people all over the globe just so they can have them working in the same time zones as the developer teams. Yeah, that's what we'll be able to do.
It is becoming a very, very common practice, and from a resource standpoint, if you had to actually have, a physical office in every time zone that you did work in, you're talking on the cheap side, you're talking probably $7,000 or $8,000 a month in rent expenses for just the 4 time zones in the United States. Easily.
Yeah. And it really is bringing some things together, and with it there are some challenges though, because we've been in quarantine now a few months at the most, 90 days. I was talking to somebody that manages a pretty big team right now. I think it's 30 people or something like that. And they were concerned about the long-term effects of working remotely. And I don't mean effects. It's like in the office environment, you develop relationships with people, and this person is doing well. They're an up and coming person. How do you build those same kind of relationships, and how do you build the water cooler type relationships, or I step by your cubicle and ask you a bit of advice kind of relationships? I think that's going to be one of the challenges that we do have to address in the remote work environment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's coming along though. So you have a lot of companies use like either Microsoft Teams or Slack or one of those big business chat platforms.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of advantage there. I think that helps with those relationships. I think also it comes down to how your leaders are handling things like your team meetings and stuff like that as well. Because if I just come into a team meeting and it's all business, you're going to lose that culture piece of it. So
you have to be a lot more intentional as a leader. I mean, you have to set up specific time to like water cooler talk. Otherwise you lose it, like you said. And that's just one of those things that you're not used to as a leader. It's like, because of that normal interaction, you have to replace it with a scheduled interaction.
Yep, I agree. I think as a leader, it is definitely more challenging to add that time into your day very intentionally.
Yeah, no doubt.
But I think it's interesting is that there's ways to do it effectively, but just as you can do it effectively, there are ways to let it get out of control too.
Yeah.
Right. I always liken it to it takes 15 minutes to get into whatever task you're working on, and then it takes you another 15 minutes to get back to it. Right. So that means if your disruption is 10 minutes, now we've taken, almost 45 minutes.
Yeah.
For a quick conversation. So, that's where like chat tools are great, but can also be a hindrance as well.
Yeah, if you're getting hammered with instant messages all day through Slack or Teams, I mean that's what you do. It's the same reason why you should turn your notifications off on your phones and everything else if you're gonna, that kind of stuff productively. I mean, I can't personally when I did that on my phone, I don't have any notifications on my phone. It's like the day just came back to me, and nothing really changed in my business. So
I was talking to Lucas Root a couple weeks ago on Winning Tactics. We talked a lot about remote work and really as a person what you need to do to be successful in that space. And we'll definitely chat a little bit about that because I think there's some interesting things that we both can bring to the table on that. But one of the things that he talked about was he schedules basically he calls it a 50-minute hour, right? For this, right? So he works solid on something for 50 minutes, or if it's 2 periods, he's going to work 50 minutes, take a 10-minute break, and then 15 minutes because of focus, right? That's the first piece of it. Second piece of it is that 10 minutes allows him to answer an email, answer a phone call, transition from one activity to the next in that 10-minute kind of break period. And what he's found is that helps him be considerably more productive in those 50-minute blocks, because all of his distractions are taken away for that 50 minutes.
Yeah, that is a good practice. I don't do that nearly well enough, and that's in fact, I was writing it down here because I need to do that better. It's just one of those things. I mean, because you start to get this stuff, and again, it's the same thing with notifications. If you do that well and you don't have your notifications, and even if you shut your email down completely, and do that, that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, so I've always set the precedence with my teams, just in general, from a productivity standpoint, office, remote, whatever, it doesn't matter, is emails is within one business day, you're going to get a response from me.
Yeah.
So at some point in a business day, I'm going to look at that email and I'm going to respond or take necessary action with it. The chat, you're going to get a response from me within the same business day. If you need to talk to me like right now, it absolutely has to be dealt with now. That's either a phone call or walking up to me and going, I need to deal with it. And by setting those levels of urgency, it helps me at least organize, what do I need to work on now versus what can I put on hold and work on later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's a good way to do it. It's a good way to do it for sure.
Takes a little bit of time, training and time with your team, because you still get the people that are going to send you an email going, I need this now, urgent, red flag, red flag. Like,
yeah, that's not going to work. But it is. But like you said, though, I wrote it down again because it's something I need to reinforce, because even in larger companies, I've got a client now that's decent sized company, and they're horrible about emails. I mean, but it's from the top down, and when you have that, the leaders have to start doing, setting the examples, and this is one of the things that I see in businesses is that the owners say something like this, but then they don't do it. If they don't do it, then nobody does it. You have to set the examples. So
exactly, yeah,
good point. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about communication in the remote space. We said we have to be more intentional about it, and I'm sure that you've been, like I have been, a part of the proverbial conference call that should have been an email. Yeah. Right. So what are some strategies that you figured out to be more focused on your communication in the remote workspace?
Well, you get rid of emails or get rid of meetings if they're not effective. First of all, just look at them. If your calendar is full of like internal business meetings, see which ones you can kill, and then the ones that you keep, make sure you've got an agenda. If you get off agenda and you just start talking about stuff, that's fine only if you're talking about significant issues that have to be solved right there. Anything other than that is useless. Not useless, but it's not nearly as important as those immediate issues, because really, if you look at something as simple as the EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, their meeting format is pretty good. It's pretty solid. Give most of your time to look at your issues and solve them. At least have a plan. Go forward. Take a step forward on them, and that's pretty good. But really, it is get rid of the worthless ones. Or when you come into those meetings, because been in them where you've got 20 people in a room, and you're updating people on status. Why are you doing that? Why would you ever have a meeting to update on status? Send it out. One person can send it out. Everyone review it. If it's not that important to you to review it, if it's sent to you, then why is it going to be any more important if you're in a meeting? And that's one of the things that I've often said, if you're a business person and you're in a meeting and someone is reading off a list to update you on status, stop that. I mean, just get that out of your meeting, because come prepared.
Yeah,
prepared to solve problems. That's what I always tell people.
I absolutely love that. I think, so status meetings should be more so around. They should be an email, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, more realistically, unless, the exception to that is if you need to build a discussion around a specific status, like underperforming metric, something like that, where you need to have a discussion about how do we solve this, right? But the end game there is coming up with a solution.
Yeah. So again, you've got an issue and you're trying to solve it, and that's a great reason to get together.
Yeah.
In the manufacturing companies that we help, they just about across the board, the teams have a quick 5-minute meeting in the morning, and this is what we want to do, unless they're just production line kind of. But if they're not, they're doing custom whatever, they need to have that. It's very effective. It's a stand-up meeting. It's 5 minutes. It's like, anybody got any issues? This is what we're doing today. Ready to go. And those are good. Yeah.
Yep. I absolutely love the stand-up meeting in the morning before everybody gets going. I used to have with my teams when I was in the call center in the training world. I used to have the coffee meeting in the morning, because we were all avid coffee addicts. So we would have the coffee meeting in the morning. Everybody get their cup of coffee, and we would stand. Literally, we would stand in the middle of the break room for 5 minutes, and all right, what's everybody got to work on? Here's the objectives for the day, and disperse and go.
Yeah.
And it was quick. It was down and dirty, but it was very intentional to set precedence of what needed to happen for the day. So I love the stand-up meeting. I think it's great for remote work as well. You have to be structured with it. It doesn't have to be your stand-up meeting could be a chat conversation. That's what we do with our team. If there's any objectives that need to be completed, we push that out through our Slack chat to the team we have.
That's a good idea.
First thing in the morning, leadership drives that, and then if they have any concerns or anything that comes up, you have kind of that dialogue for the day, and then everything else is handled how it needs to be handled. So
yeah, if you got that ready and that went out in the morning, that would be good, because you could lay out the major objectives that people need to be focusing on, and boom, you're good.
Yep. Yeah. So in the manufacturing space, the stand-up meetings, I've heard a lot of talk about how they use them to talk about like production. What's the production got to be at today? Yeah. By lunch, we need to be at X number of parts. By close of shift, we need to be at X amount of parts, and we need to average this many parts per day to stay up, or parts per hour to stay up, right? And it just lets everybody know what the expectation is. So really, really think setting clear expectations at the beginning of every day is a good starting point.
Yeah, it's the way you build good weeks and build good months and good years, by building good hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it all starts from that. Yeah, cool.
So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about time management in remote work, because that is, when I talk to people that are uncomfortable with remote work or adverse to remote work situations, that is almost always in the top 3 reasons why they don't want to go to remote work. Something along the lines of, I can't make sure people are productive. I don't think the work is going to get done in time. Something along those lines. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a concern. It's a valid concern too. It's a valid concern because, you just have people that are going to perform better if they're in the office environment, or they don't have the environment. Really, I think the biggest thing is you don't have an environment that you can work in,
Mm-hmm.
And that's the toughest, I think. And that's been super hard for a lot of these people. I mean, I can't imagine, I don't have young kids anymore, but if I had, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old here trying to take my attention during the day, and which they were normally in daycare at school, geez, that'd be tough. It'd be tough.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of things I think that are a lot of people are really struggling with because of the kids at home. But overall, if you can't measure performance, and then that person that's doing something understand that, so say I have to, as you said before, we have to get X amount of this done, or I have to complete this today, and understand how to measure and how to communicate that to the person doing it, and then measure if it's getting done, that it makes it challenging. It does make it challenging. And I don't think there's going to be any real way to get around it other than put the things in place to do that.
Yeah. I think, at least in my mind, I think the big conversation to be had is shifting as a leader, shifting your mindset focus, right? So in an office, we're focused on time. Your start time is 9 o'clock. Your lunch time is 1 o'clock. The end of the day is 5 o'clock, right? And we're very focused on time in the office. Where in the remote work setting, in my mind, you have to be more outcome focused.
Yes.
Right? Unless there's a reason that you need to have somebody like covering a phone during X hours.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter in my mind as much about what time they get that work done, as long as they put in their hours for the week and got the work done on time.
Yeah. And that's very true. Yeah, that's very true. It's hard to measure that too, So if I'm working for an engineering company and I'm an engineer, that's one thing, because there's certain things I have to do there. If I'm someone that's doing proposals, or if I'm in a call center kind of situation that you're familiar with, that would be a time sensitive thing, obviously. Yep. But there are so many that aren't, and it really is it is an outcome based thing. Meet your deadlines, get the work done that you need to get done. And what is the difference then between being in the office and doing it? What is the difference is if you're a late night person and you finish it at 10 o'clock at night, or later, and it comes out good? What is the real difference? And that's when you think about that and you utilize it right. There's some people that work better at 10 o'clock at night than they ever will at 8 o'clock in the morning. But if you're making them come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, those are the same people that are dragging ass and going, oh, God, I hate to be here, because they're normally, that's the better time of night for them. And if you can do that, you actually get better productivity from those people by utilizing their natural peak times. And that's the other thing. You look at this and you go, okay, how can I really optimize the performance of my employees by allowing them to work when it's better? Because even in the situation, just say, if we didn't have to deal with the COVID stuff right now and just think about traditional work, and you go a stay-at-home parent, you could easily flex your day. I did it for years, where you get the kids ready, go to the school, work during the day, get them situated after work, finish up your work in the evening. Yep. You can do that remote. You can't do that in an office.
Nope.
And you have a ton of talented people. So if you can figure out these flexible work solutions, it opens up the opportunity to really get some better, not better, but get a wider audience of talented people.
Yeah. And let's be real about it, right? In an office, how many hours do people actually really work? Like really hardcore, how much are they actually working? My guess is somewhere between 5 and 6 hours out of that 8 hours of their day, right? So,
yeah.
So you're paying them for a 40-hour work week, but you're really only getting probably 30 to 35 hours of actual work out of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's true. It's been true for years. It's ever. And so I think they're just that whole, the time management portion of it is, and COVID's been good because it forced that into people. Yeah. It's like, I don't have a choice. I got to have all my people working from home. And then they went, well, this is great because it actually works. And I'm getting some. You're always going to have some people that it doesn't work for. Doesn't matter. Those are the same people that may not work for in the office too. So, that's just the way it is. But when you think about this as a business going forward, you go, okay, now, do I need as much office space? Do I need, do I have to have this or can I really flex it around? Like my example earlier with my e-commerce client, you may not be able to go, I get rid of my office completely, but I look at some of these big behemoths. You look at a Microsoft or an Amazon here in Seattle, and they got these expansive campuses and all this stuff. Well, what if 30% of their people came to the office 2 or 3 days a week? And what would that do to the office space requirements on somebody that's leasing hundreds and millions of square feet of office space every year? If I could somehow transition my workforce so I can rotate it so I need 30 or 40% less space. Yeah. It's a huge cost savings. And when you go back to the things that you talked about with, the talent pool because of geographical barriers and all the other things that you can do because of the remote work, you go, it makes a lot of sense to figure this out.
Yeah,
it really does.
Well, even in small businesses, right?
Oh yeah.
If I have a team of 15 people and I required them to come into an office, that office is probably in this area is probably going to cost me $2,500 for a small office, to work out of, right?
Yeah.
Even if I gave every person on my team $50 towards their cell phone and $50 towards their internet to work at home, I'm still going to save about $1,000 a month on cost to, and I'm going to give them the same set of tools that they would have at the office anyway, because they're still going to need email. They're still going to need, chat. They're still going to need video conferencing. They're still going to need all that stuff in the normal recourse of their day. So those costs I'm already going to pay for anyway. So,
yeah.
So, that's, I think
exactly right. Exactly right. And, there are ways to work this out. And when you look at it, like my e-commerce client, I forget what it was, it's, for them, it's going to be $40,000-$50,000 a year. They figured after everything they're going to save, and that's nothing to sneeze at,
No.
Nothing. When you look at it and you go, how do we be more efficient as business overall? How do we get a more diverse and more talented workforce? It's like remote is one way that you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And so I think it's interesting, you've got some platforms coming out now. Obviously we've always had like Zoom and Google Hangouts and Microsoft Teams to meet remotely. Yeah. But now you actually have some platforms coming to build virtual offices.
Yeah.
Some of the big ones out there is Walkabout Workplace, Remo, and Sococo are kind of the big three that are the most common to find. And they incorporate a lot of those functionalities like Zoom and all that stuff into the platform. But you also get this feel of like, I'm in an office. I can go knock on somebody's door and have that conversation with them. Even though we're across the country from each other. And so what are your thoughts on virtual office spaces? Have you gone down that? Have you looked at any of that?
We actually use Remo a lot. I mean, we started off, we've got a Thursday call that we do Thursday mornings. And if anybody wants to do, they can look at my LinkedIn profile. We promote it there. But we started doing Zoom calls. And when we started doing the Zoom calls, it was great up until you get about so many people on it, right? And then you just lose it all because it just is noise. And what we found with Remo is that, they have a 6-person table setting. It's more like a conference. And it works pretty good for that kind of environment. But I have heard about, I've never gotten on them, like the Walkabout Office. Is that your Walkabout Workplace?
Yep.
I think those would be very important because then it's much easier for people to do the water cooler type chat. I mean, because if you're sitting there and you're not in your focus period, or you're in a transitional period, or you're just having lunch or whatever, you could be sitting in there and you could be chatting with people and doing that to get more of that interaction. And I think that would be good. And really the one thing that a couple things, but the one thing is that collaboration that you can get by being in close proximity to somebody is where I would hope that those would be helping.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's going to be a real thing, especially when you think of the hybrid environment that you're going to have with part of your team here, part of your team working remotely. Because I'm convinced that that remote working is going to be a bigger portion of the overall for every company going forward after this. And it is now, and it's just going to continue. And there inevitably have to be solutions like that to help that.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I think this forced companies to realize that this is a real solution for them to reduce and cut costs from facilities standpoint. So, so I'm totally on board with that. And as for the virtual spaces, I've been on Remo, I've been on Secoko, and I actually am in the process of launching a virtual co-working space on Walkabout Workplace here in the
cool. That'll be cool. I think that's that kind of thing is really taking it to the next level, because it'll be interesting to see how those platforms roll up and then what they integrate. Do they integrate something like Teams has, where you've got the file sharing and you've got the Slack type messaging and when you get into we use Office 365. When you get into that thing and you really start setting it up and you're using the planner, you're using all that, the interoperability between things, it gets pretty cool. It's some of it's kind of cumbersome and ugly. It's Microsoft. They do a great job on the main line, but some of this ancillary stuff is not so good. But it'll be interesting how those virtual workplace systems really build that out, because if you can stay in there and do all this stuff, I think that will be the most productive solution. Because if you're in and out of something, I don't think you're going to get near the use from it that you would if you can get these other things around it working too. So that'll be cool to see. That'll be cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. Our team's on the Google platform, so similar type functionality as the Microsoft world. Just the others, they're the other people. But at the end of the day, it's very similar functionality, and so I think the platforms that are going to win in the virtual space are the ones that are going to figure out how to combine, like you said, all the best of both worlds together. And it doesn't necessarily, in my mind, mean that they have to be the ones to be the software to control the file sharing and the chat and all that stuff. They just need to be able to integrate that within whatever they're doing.
I think actually when you talk about that and you talk about integration and stuff, these new platforms that you see coming out that can just connect with everybody, those are almost more effective than the way that Microsoft or Google have done it in situations where it's ours, because you do have businesses that are specialty, and I think that's interesting too that we see. And as remote comes, it's going to push some of that.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. We are getting towards the end of time. Cool. We have talked about some really great stuff in the remote workspace. I always like to wrap up the day with some final thoughts. So everything we talked about today, what is your final thought? What's something that you feel is really important that people should take away from today's conversation?
Well, don't be afraid of the remote working. It will take some intentional effort, but I think if you do it, there are a lot of good benefits from it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I agree 100%. Where can people find you as well?
It just, again, Damon Pistulka, Pistulka, not hard to find. I'm the only one, I think, in the world. So look me up on LinkedIn. Find us on our website, exityourway.us. And it's easy to do.
Awesome. So if you are looking to exit your business or just looking for strategies as you're starting to think about it, definitely reach out to Damon. He is a huge, awesome resource in that space. Last time we were on, we specifically talked about that. So I will put a link in the comments to that conversation as well if you want to learn more about that. As always, it does take a little bit of time, effort, and cash flow to make this happen for you all a couple days a week. So if you love what you listened to today, support us, patreon.com/Adam Sinkus. Every penny that's donated there goes back into helping create the show and keep the show running. As always, you can find this. This will be on LinkedIn, Facebook. If you're listening live, if you're on the replay team, come find it. And then hopefully sooner than later, I will get this up onto my YouTube channel as well. So have a wonderful afternoon. Again, Damon, thank you so much. And we will catch you on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right.